Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I'm Putri Nurhusnina and I'm going to be presenting my research project in dietetics on nutritional status and food consumption pattern of children with autism and Down syndrome in few districts of Kelantan. So this is my outline. So first we go through introduction. According to person with disabilities include those who have long-term physical, mental and intellectual or sensory impairment which interaction with various barriers may hinder their full and effective participation in society. So according to UNICEF, children with disabilities have an imbalance of food intake and faulty utilization of nutrition may engender other reverse nutritional status and malnutrition among them. Aim of the study is to determine the nutritional status and food consumption pattern of children with autism and Down syndrome in Kelantan. So this is the problem statement. So the body of children with disabilities might vary of the toleration of diet, levels of nutrients, body and ability of those levels to maintain normal metabolic integrity. For the research question, as you can see, does nutritional status and food consumption pattern significantly correlated among children with autism or Down syndrome in few districts in Kelantan? So for the main objective, determine the nutritional status and food consumption of children with autism or Down syndrome in Kelantan, and specific objective is to see if there is significant correlation between nutritional status and food consumption pattern. This is my research hypothesis. So for the significance of the research is to assess the nutritional status among children and evaluate the trend of food consumption among children with autism and Down syndrome, and to identify which foods are taken the most among these children, and also to assess the correlation between food consumption pattern and nutritional status. So first full of literature review, it's a term in which covers impairments, activity limitations and participation restrictions in every aspect, and according to UNICEF, their disability also places them at high risk of physical abuse and often excluded from receiving proper nutrition. Into Autism Awareness Center, autism is a lifelong non-progressive neurological disorder typically appearing before the age of 3 years. The word autism itself means a developmental disability significantly affecting verbal and non-verbal communication and social interaction. Down syndrome, it is a condition in which an individual has an extra chromosomes as we call as trisomy 21. This extra copy changes how the baby's body and brain develop, which then can cause both mental and physical challenges for the baby. Occurrence of malnutrition can be highly found among children with disabilities. This is due to their appropriate dietary energy intake, or motor dysfunction, and so on. And occurrence of overnutrition due to energy imbalance affects growth in children and impacts negatively on body composition, muscle strength, and so on. Malnutrition among Down syndrome and autism children, is it common? Among Down syndrome children, there will be an excessive weight gain. This is one of the nutritional problem, and there is an abnormal estimated rate of growth among children with autism, but that shows inconsistent findings and prevalence of overweight and obesity among them. So for the food consumption pattern, as well known, this is a variety of approaches used for examining the dietary pattern and so on, and this FFQ can provide estimates on the frequency and quantity of foods consumed by individuals. So moving on to chapter 2. For the study design, it is a cross-sectional study. For the study location, it was conducted in all CBR in some areas in Kelantan, 4 districts which are Kota Baru, Bachok, Pasir Putih and Tumpai. For the study population, children with autism and Down syndrome in the CBR, and sampling was used to select the study location. This is the inclusion criteria, exclusion criteria, and withdrawal criteria. Peer-mean correlation have been used to test null hypothesis in the study, and G-power analysis was used to calculate the sample size. So for the research tool, I used social demographical background questionnaire, anthropometric measurement, food frequency questionnaire. So these are my step-by-step data collection, the data analysis of analyze using SPSS, and descriptive statistics was used to summarize the social demographic data, and spearmint correlation was used to analyze the significant correlation between the top 10 early or weekly consumed food among Down syndrome, autism in children, body mass index, and height for age. So this is a flowchart of study. Moving on to the result. As you can see, the frequency of children with disabilities on Down syndrome is more than autism, constitute of 35 against 26. This is the social demographic characteristics results. You can see one by one. As you can see, these students rarely getting 6, which is getting 6 over than 3 months. And based on this result, among autism children, almost half of them having a normal range for height. And then on top of that, most of the subjects with autism also considered normal for their BMI, and there were only like 11.5% of these subjects were categorized as underweight. Okay, and then for the Down syndrome, mostly they were categorized as normal range for height according to the CDC's height for age range specific for Down syndrome, and most of the subjects with Down syndrome were also considered normal for their body mass index according to the same CDC's BMI range, and none of them were categorized as overweight and obese, and there was likely to be 37.1% of these subjects were categorized as underweight. So this is the result from mean frequency of top 10 daily and weekly consumed foods and beverages among children with Down syndrome. As we can see, white rice has the highest mean among this group of children. Apart from that, mostly fried food taken among these groups of fried chicken, fried meat, bihun, and the frequency of fried chicken was consumed by the subjects is 5 to 6 times in a week. Overall, other food items were taken 2 to 4 times in a week. Moving on to the autism, this finding, similar to Down syndrome, white rice has the highest mean among this group of children. They take 2 to 3 times in a day. On average, this is the only one taken daily and the rest are taken weekly. So the second most consumed food takes sugar with about 5 to 6 times in a week. And apart from that, mostly fried food taken among these groups are fried chicken, fried egg, or omelette, and crab or crab. And then frequency of fried chicken and fried egg or omelette consumed by these subjects were about 2 to 4 times per week. Following that, milk powder was most beverages taken by children with autism, followed by tea or coffee. And then white bread or whole grain cereals, spring bun, fried fish, and crab egg were taken once a week. Okay, moving on to the correlation between BMI with top 10 daily and weekly consumed food beverages among children with Down syndrome. No significant correlation was found between body mass index with the top 10 daily consumed foods and beverages among these children, except for white rice and soy sauce. White rice has a moderate positive strength of correlation, and same goes to the soy sauce. The autism children, there is no significant correlation was found between BMI with top 10 daily consumed foods and beverages. With these children, correlation between height for age and top 10 food frequency among children with Down syndrome, we found that there is no significant correlation, but then except for milk powder. Milk powder has moderate negative strength of correlation with height for age. Autism, a correlation between height for age and top 10 food, there is no significant correlation was found. Here we are in the part discussion, so this is an introduction. Moving on to the nutritional status. Among autism children, almost half of them having a normal range for height according to the CDC's height for age as stated in the result before. So to be compared with a study, there is an accelerated body growth in boys with autism spectrum disorders. Uniform rise in growth shows that there may be differences in growth regulation in autism spectrum disorder boys, but the fact that the difference in mean length decrease after 18 months indicates that accelerated growth it presents may be a short-term phenomenon of early childhood and not a persistent feature of autism. Most of the subjects with autism were also considered normal as stated before. So in comparison with other studies, the mean BMI of autism spectrum disorder boys was similar to those of other boys at all age, and there was no indication of an increase in early childhood obesity in boys. As stated before in the result, Down syndrome has normal height for age and normal body mass index according to the CDC's. However, none of them were categorized as overweight and obese, plus there were only few of these subjects were categorized as underweight. So according to a review study, have shown that children with Down syndrome were shorter than the standard reference of typically developing children, but they had comparable weights. Down syndrome children also tend to grow in different way, and their growth is distinguished by an earlier onset of growth spurt and reduced. Based on another study, weight for age was significantly decreased among the studies of subjects with Down syndrome. This was reflected by the higher prevalence of underweight among Down syndrome. This study was an uplift since it was in line with the MDG for children and adolescents, which favor children to eat variety of foods within the recommendation. Another key recommendation stated in MDG, in order to attain variety of nutritious food, these children are advised to consume or choose food from the 5 food groups. In this finding, shown that rice was an average being consumed daily among both groups. According to MDG children, key recommendation for cereal-based food including rice must be taken with an adequate amount according to age. Fried chicken was included in the top 10 most consumed foods happen to be taken by both groups. stressed that key recommendation for these children is to include appropriate amounts and types of fats in the diet. Restriction of energy from fat for children aged up to 2 years old may adversely affect the growth. Milk powder was one of the top 10 weekly consumed beverages among both groups. Scientific evidence indicates that the consumption of milk and animal products can yield to significant health benefits towards children and adolescents. Numerous dietary guidelines have recommended an adequate intake of milk or any other milk products which are linked to improve children's both bone health and healthy growth. Food items consumed weekly by both groups was sugar, and these are usually added to beverages such as tea, coffee, and malted based drink. So according to MDG, the key recommendation for children and adolescents is to include appropriate amounts and types of fats in diet. High intake of sugar among children may involve health issues, such example micronutrient deficiency, promote development of overweight and obesity. Popular belief dietary studies consistently reveal that hyperactive children eat more sugar than other children, and it can happen to both groups. Autism and Down syndrome. Among Down syndrome children, there is no significant correlation was found, except for white rice and soy sauce. So it signifies that an increase of intake of white rice or soy sauce may have cross-cutting of increase of BMI in Down syndrome. In one of the study, they revealed that overall daily protein, carbohydrate, and total fat intake of Down syndrome subjects was significantly higher compared to control population. So another study stated that obesity status in healthy schools in Greece, overweight obese children consume a significantly larger portion of their energy from carbohydrates, protein, and sugar. It has shown that significant association between sodium excretion and obesity among children and adolescents. As sodium excretion was correlated to energy intake in the study, it is possible that sodium intake is associated with obesity. Higher sodium intake is accompanied by increased formation of adipocyte tissues, which could be through altering fat metabolism in the body. There is no significant correlation was stated in the result between height for age with top 10 daily consumed foods and beverages among Down syndrome children, except milk powder. The study has revealed that an increase in milk powder intake among children with Down syndrome decrease in height. A study from National Children's Food Survey and National Teen Food Survey has disclosed that high consumption of added sugar was associated with a decrease in the micronutrient density of the diet. However, there is no similar findings which results as similar to this finding. Many other variables will be a limitation of the study, what will be taken for the reason why increase in milk powder intake among the student yield a decrease in height. Nevertheless, there is no significant correlation result was found between body mass index and height for each with this top 10 daily consumed foods and beverages among children with autism limitation. Only few subjects were recruited and it was limited to few districts in Kelantan, which may not cover overall nutritional status pattern for these children. And also, consistent finding may arise because of the differences in the study design, the sample size, recruitment procedures, and methods used to assess the nutritional status. Instruments and techniques of measurement used to measure weight and height and of children with disability will also differ depending on the study objective. Other variables will be a limitation of the study that may affect this finding result. So as for conclusion, the majority of the children with autism Down syndrome has a normal nutritional status. Of them are underweight, overweight, and obese. Down syndrome and autism children living in Kelantan consume rice at least once daily. Children with Down syndrome seems to eat high carbohydrates food and high sodium food, and then increased intake of carbohydrates and sodium food may increase likelihood of these children to become overweight or obese. The trend shown by these autism children that are more likely to consume high-fat food and high-sugar food. Studies have stated that high-sugar food may switch one's behavior and to become more hyper. Overall, there is no significant correlation among these children autism with these top 10 frequently consumed foods. The finding from the studies has stated that an increase in white rice and soy sauce among Down syndrome children has a link in increases of body mass index, despite an increase of milk powder has shown that a decrease in height among these children. In the conclusion, to enhance a better result on this nutritional status and food consumption pattern among children with Down syndrome and autism, a further study should be highlighted in the future. So this is the reference. Okay, so with that, thank you.